Mike Olcott, thank you so much. We appreciate it. So why are you running for House District 60, and why should Republicans in the primary vote for you over the incumbent Republican, Glenn Rogers?
Sure, and thanks for this interview, Jack, and welcome to Willow Park Baptist Church. I think one of the primary reasons I'm running, I think we live in a very conservative district, HD 60, and I think my values better reflect the values of this conservative district. More specifically, I think that I am truly going down there to work for the voters in this district. I don't accept any money from lobbies or PACs. It's only individual donors, and I'm committed to not being beholden to anyone other than the voters themselves and the people that I represent. Because of the two big issues I think facing this district, or three, there's three big issues, but two in particular I think that I'm better qualified, and that is the border, and that's something that I've been involved with ever since 2004, and it's something I feel very passionate about. And if we don't do something about the border, we're going to lose our country. It's an issue I know very well, and I'm convinced that the federal government's never going to secure that border, and it's going to require the state to implement Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, and basically take matters in their own hand and secure that border. Property taxes is probably my second biggest issue. That's an issue I've also been fighting probably since 2014 and advocating for property tax relief. And while we got some relief this last session, we could have gotten a lot more, and that's something that I'm going to be fighting for.
Last time you ran, 2 years ago, it was a close race.
Yes.
You didn't cross the finish line.
Yes, sir.
How are you going to change that this time around?
Well, I think I spent more time in, I won Parker County by 10 percentage points, by more than 1,500 votes. I fully expect to actually expand upon that. I think we've made good headways in the Palomino County. I've had, almost on a daily basis, I get 2 to 3 phone calls, people out there that supported Glenn Rogers last time that are not supporting him this time. I think his vote to impeach Ken Paxton has really hurt him. And I think I think people are becoming more aware of his voting record and his tendency to vote with the Democrats. And I think that the best way to summarize it, I think people are becoming more educated on his voting record. And I think and then of course with the endorsements, last time, as you know, Governor Abbott endorsed him. This time he's endorsing me, along with Ted Cruz and Sid Miller and Attorney General Ken Paxton. So I'm feeling very good about the race, the momentum we have, and things I think are looking really good.
Why do you think those endorsements by the governor this time around,
Sure.
and yesterday when we were at your rally, he said that it was a mistake,
Yes, sir.
for him to vote for Glenn Rogers, and that he was changing his mind and correcting the mistake.
Yes, sir.
When you heard that, what went through your mind, and why do you think all of these endorsements even matter?
Sure. Well, first of all, I thought that spoke volumes about the governor, that he was willing to admit that he made a mistake. And I thought the way he handled it and the way he conveyed it, I thought was really, really nice. And obviously I agreed with him, because I think he did make a mistake last time. But I'm very honored to have his endorsement this time. I think maybe one of the most powerful things about that is the fact that one of the things that my opponent does is he likes to accuse me of lying about his voting record, despite the fact that everything we put out in a mailer is actually referenced, or people can go look it up themselves to see whether they voted that. But his campaign strategy, and it's very obvious, it's the same this time, is just to claim that I'm lying. Even when other organizations are sending out mail claiming that he did something or didn't do something, he's actually blaming those mail pieces on me, saying that I'm lying, even though from what I can tell, everything they're saying is true too. But I think it's, Governor Abbott has publicly stated that I'm a man of integrity and honesty, and I think that's going to make it harder for voters to believe the lies he's telling when he says that I'm the liar, and they're more likely to actually check to see whether or not what he's saying is true or not. So,
you mentioned your work
Yes,
as
sir.
far as border security.
Yes, sir.
What work was that? I mean,
it wasn't work, it was volunteer work.
Okay, so
It began in 2005, on April 1st, 2005, and it actually started in Tombstone, Arizona, is where we had our first meeting. It was the Minuteman Project. And it was 878 of us from all over the country met down there because we were frustrated that the federal government wasn't doing anything about the border. And we met for 30 days then in April. I was only down there for 25 days because I had a prior commitment in the middle of it, but I actually went back to finish the last few days. And so that's something, and I became intrigued not only with just the willingness of people to actually go down there and volunteer their time. I met some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, people that are just love this country. A lot of former Marines, a couple of ex-FBI agents, policemen, but mostly blue-collar workers that just love this country, and it had a major effect on my life, and so much so that at the time I was doing biomedical research at Oregon State University, and I went back there, and as I was there, and I already knew that many of the faculty members there were, they're Democrats that they have a very different view of this country, and it just got to a point where I wanted to spend more time with like-minded people like that I met at the border. And so a couple of years after I spent that time at the border, and I was continuing to go, and I was doing further border watches in New Mexico, California, and Texas. And it just got to a point where I was blessed where I could afford to retire. So my wife and I moved back to Texas, and we became very active politically, and that's what we've been doing ever since.
And so, going back to what you were doing when you first started as part of the Minutemen, so
Sure.
you were just volunteers?
Just volunteers. We were just an exercise.
Patrolling?
Yeah, no, we weren't patrolling. They didn't really want us walking around and doing that. So we basically, what we did is we paired up every quarter mile, and we had a walkie-talkie and a cell phone, and so basically we were just an extra set of eyes and ears for the Border Patrol. So if we saw someone coming in, we would call most of the time on our walkie-talkie, we'd call our supervisor, and then they would call Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol would show up and arrest and detain them, and so that's all we were, was an extra set of eyes and ears. I'll give you a quick example. So in Arizona, this is probably around 2007, late 2007 in Arizona, there were about 20 of us out there in pairs, maybe over about a half-mile area. And we detected 20 illegal immigrants coming towards us. I had actually a thermal camera, and I detected them. And so I called my supervisor, and he called the Border Patrol, and we had one agent show up. And the 20 that I saw had broken into two different groups. There was like 4, and then there was another 16. And so the ones that were closest to me, there were 4 of them. And so I actually was directing the Border Patrol agent. He first came to me and then looked through my thermal. He didn't actually have a thermal camera, but he looked through my thermal camera and spotted where they were, and so he went out there, and then he arrested them, and he brought them back, and he was processing them. And as he was processing them, the 12 illegal immigrants that were a little bit further to the west, I saw them walking back south and then eventually walking to the east, maybe about 3/4 mile away. And so I turned to the Border Patrol agent as he was arresting him and saying, can you call another agent because there's 12 more illegal immigrants out there? And he said, unfortunately, I'm the only agent within 20 miles. And that was very frustrating and discouraging. But anyway, it was something that, I felt like I was doing what I could, to make a difference at the border, and I think we were. One major difference that I saw at the border back then than what's happening now, the last time I was at the border, it was December 31st, 2021, is that almost all, not all, but most of the illegal immigrants coming across today are actually trying to seek out Border Patrol. They want to get caught because they know that they're going to get immediate admission to the country. They're going to get free transportation to where they want to go, whether it's by bus or by airplane. And so, back then, when I was first doing it, they were trying to avoid Border Patrol, so I felt like we were making a difference because they were being apprehended and most of the time being deported. So a major difference between what's happened at the border back then and now.
Is there something that the state is not doing that you think the state should be doing?
Sure. Well, I was really, really happy, as you heard me say yesterday, the letter that Governor Abbott said yesterday. I've been actually hoping for that declaration of invasion for quite some time now, that basically, in my opinion, gives the governor the power and the authority to actually take over the immigration responsibilities the federal government's failing. Because under Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, the federal government is supposed to be protecting us against what's happening at our southern border. Now, the word invasion is the key word there. But I believe that because they're not, that under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, and also under the Texas Constitution, Article 4, Section 7, we have the right to defend ourselves. And with all the crime and human trafficking come across the border, I think we have the right to actually take matters in their own hand, arrest, detain, and most importantly, deport illegal immigrants. And so if I get elected, I'm going to be pushing for legislation that actually does that. Now, there is a bill out there that might, it looks like it might do that, and that's going to, I think, comes into effect March 1st, and I hope that takes place, but we'll see what happens. But that's something that I feel has to happen. And I think the rest of the country is looking to Texas to solve this problem. And it's something that, that we have to address.
You're talking about Senate Bill 4, which
Yes,
is
sir.
already being challenged in the
Yes, sir.
courts.
Right.
But even so, the U.S. Supreme Court has said previously that only the federal government has jurisdiction over immigration.
Yes, that was back, like, I think, ruling back in 2011 under the Arizona law that was passed. And I used to know the bill number, I can't remember it anymore, but they actually approved part of that bill, and I think that's when they approved the E-Verify mandates. But you're right, there were some things in there they said they weren't allowed to do, but we had a different Supreme Court back then. And I was also reminded by the governor yesterday that, I think you heard him say that, is that it's not over. And this ruling, a couple of weeks ago, whenever it came out, it basically sent it back to, I think, the Fifth Circuit of Appeals. So he says it's not over. So I'm very hopeful that they're going to recognize that under the Constitution, we have a right to defend ourselves.
Another issue that has come up down in Austin and in various campaigns is whether Democrats should continue to be committee chairs
Yes, sir.
in the Texas House.
Yes, sir.
Some conservatives have criticized this
Yes, sir.
practice. What was your reaction? The governor actually said during your event that he indicated that he opposed that.
Yes.
What was your reaction?
Well, I was happy to hear that because I hadn't heard him weigh in before, but I was happy because I am one of those conservatives that are not happy with the fact that the Speaker of the Texas House, despite the fact that Republicans control everything in Austin, or theoretically do, that the Speaker of the House is continuing to award chairmanships to powerful committees to Democrats. And not only do I oppose it, but more than 90% of Texas Republicans oppose it. And not only is it in our platform, in the Republican Party of Texas platform, it's also one of the top legislative priorities of the Republican Party of Texas. And so one of the things that grassroots conservatives are upset with is that most of the Republicans, especially in the Texas House, tend to totally disregard the will of the Republican primary voters. I mean, as you know, Jack, every couple of years, we have 7,000 Republicans, mostly grassroots conservatives, gather at a big convention, and they get together and they put together a really good platform that I'm proud of, and we come up with anywhere from 5 to 8 legislative priorities, basically saying this is what we want our Republican-led legislature to pass. And most of those priorities are never passed, and that's something that I think frustrates a lot of Republican primary voters.
When I've talked to Glenn Rogers and I talked to other Republicans who are in the House who consider themselves strong conservatives, they support continuing having Democrats as committee chairs. There aren't that many, but they say they don't want Austin to become like Washington, D.C., and they like having some semblance of bipartisanship.
Right.
What's your reaction to that?
I feel like that's a silly argument. The problems with D.C. are not the fact that Republicans don't award, Democrats chairs and vice versa. The problem with D.C. is that it's controlled by lobbyists. The whole system is controlled by lobbyists, and so I don't think that's the problem. And what they're not really telling you is that the Speaker of the Texas House, he gets elected with the support of all the Democrats and some liberal Republicans, and that's what brings that together. And so the Republicans that maybe would prefer a more conservative, many of the Republicans that would prefer a more conservative speaker, they're not going to speak out against that, because if they do, they're not going to get the chairmanships they want. So that's kind of how the way the Democrats, in a way, control the Texas House, and that's something that needs to change. And I'm hoping that if enough people like me get elected, that can join. There's some really good ones down there right now, 4 in particular. We're going to have a really good Texas House, and I think things are going to change.
School choice.
Yes, sir.
Taxpayer-financed education savings accounts, vouchers.
Yes, sir.
There's all this different wording depending on where people are on this issue. You've indicated that you support education savings accounts. Should they, private schools, religious schools, where if the students, elect to go there under this program and they receive taxpayer money to go, should those schools face the same accountability standards as public schools?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't want the tentacles of government getting into private school and homeschoolers.
So how do those schools then, what's the level of accountability for them, that they're
Sure.
educating the students?
I think that the performance of these schools speak for themselves, and I don't think that having those requirements or those types of things are actually necessary. I mean, because I believe in free market, and I believe in the fact that if those private schools aren't educating the children well enough, the parents are not going to send their kids there. And so if the parents are sending their kids to any particular private school and they're not performing, that private school will go out of business. And so that's the way the free market works. And I think that if we, those private schools you name any private schools, they're operating now, and they've been operating for some time, they're probably doing a good job, or they wouldn't exist. Because unlike public schools, people don't really have a choice. But with private schools, they do have a choice. If that school's not working, the parents can take them somewhere else. And that's the beauty of the system. And so I just don't want, as I said, I don't want the tentacles of government getting into those other things. And now, as far as like homeschoolers go, from what I understand, most of these bills that they've been proposing, it's an opt-in too. So for homeschoolers, they don't have to take any money. But if they do, there is one string that needs to be attached, and that is that money needs to be strictly used for educational purposes. They can't go out and buy TVs or use it at Best Buy. They got to use it for education. They got to be able to prove that. So.
And when I spoke with Rogers, he said that he can't be bought and paid for by any lobbyist group or anything like that.
Sure.
And he also, I've noticed on his social media that he's tried to link you to. He showed a photo of you with Brian Slayton, who was expelled from the House, and with Jonathan Stickland, who used to be the head of the Defend Texas Liberty PAC.
Yes.
And because he's been accused of hosting a white supremacist, Nazi sympathizer. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, what's your reaction to that? Are you concerned at all that those links may hurt you?
I don't think so. I think the voters are smarter than that. I think it's a sign of desperation. What's so interesting about all this is that, as I said in the beginning of this interview, I've never taken any lobby or PAC money from anybody. And so he's trying to link me in to a PAC that was headquartered in that building. And somehow, because of that, I've never taken any money from that PAC. And I don't personally believe that PAC is neo-Nazi or anti-Semites or anything like that. A guy that I don't approve of at all, that has despicable views, and I've publicly stated in a newspaper here in the Weatherford Democrat that I denounce anti-Semitism, I denounce white supremacists and neo-Nazis and all that. And I have no idea why that guy was there, but I wouldn't want to associate with him. But simply because he walked into a building, somehow that taints me, and I don't understand why that is, because I've never taken any money from that PAC. So he's trying to make it sound like I did. And those pictures he takes, Brian Slayton was the conservative state rep that actually was trying to fight against Democrat chairmanships. And when in January of, I guess last year, January of 23, a group of us went down there to thank him for doing that. And so when he made some very bad decisions, about 4 months later, that was 4 months later. That was not, and there are some of my detractors here are actually saying, well, I donated to Brian Slayton. Well, that was probably a couple of years ago, a couple of years before that incident even took place. And then when that picture was taken months before these allegations even happened. And so, I don't see, they're trying to make a connection because they're desperate. And I think it's very frustrating for my opponent, the fact that I don't take any lobby or PAC money, so no one controls me. And he's trying to make it sound like in contrast, he took $305,000 from the Speaker of the Texas House last election. So, and he takes, and I actually encourage anyone seeing this interview to go look. I would love it if you would go and look at my finance report and his finance report, and you're going to see a huge difference. All mine. I think up to date I've had more than 320, at least 320 individual donations, mostly from Christian conservatives that believe in me, believe that I'm going to go down there and do what I say I'm going to do. No money from lobbyists, PACs. Look at his report. Almost all of it comes from Austin. Big chunks of money coming from Austin. So he's the one being controlled by special interest groups. And somehow he's trying to flip things around. It kind of reminds me how Democrats act. They basically accuse their opponent of what they're doing themselves.
Is there anything else that you would like voters to know about you?
That I'm someone that's not going to waver. I'm going down there to fight for them. And if I go down there and begin moving towards the swamp and stop representing them, then I'm actually asking them right here and now to throw me out, because I'm frustrated just the way they are. I'm tired of being lied to by Republicans that say one thing and do something different. And I'm going down there because I truly want to represent the conservative Republican primary voters, although I'll be representing everyone here, but obviously I believe in the conservative philosophy, and I think if I go down there and do what I say I'm going to do, I think this district is going to be a lot better off.
Mike Olcott, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.